Welcome back to Talkin' Shit, where we are talking all sorts of shit. Schitt's Creek, that is. I'm Jess Sterling, talking about Season 2, Episode 1 of Schitt's Creek. And of course, as always, I'm joined here by my co-host, who's been stuck on an Amish farm for 3 days. And we all know him. He likes his tech. Stuart, how are you? Are you okay?
I'm good. The one thing that has kept me going is that there's one thing I know is the street value of a woman's handbag. So of course I had that. So I was all good. I had money.
I almost used that as my intro for you. So glad I didn't. I'm so excited to be back talking shit about Schitt's Creek because I love season 2. And like this first episode just does not miss. Was it all that I hyped it up to be for you, Stuart?
Really was. I think, firstly, waiting 2 weeks to watch a 30-minute episode of television is painful. I kind of was going on about how I was not looking forward to it. And on the season 1 kind of recap, I was then saying, yeah, it's painful. That second week was awful for me. I was like, no, I need this to happen right now. But yeah, so worth the wait though. And I can totally see where people are coming with the whole season 2, it gets better and stuff, because everything just feels a little bit just more refined. Characters are just firing on all cylinders. There are these little jokes that are slipping in the background that are like quite throwaway things that are just needless touches. Good quality show.
Yeah, one thing I'm thinking of is when Twyla, when we have the scene between Ted and Alexis where Alexis is like, I can't eat, I can't sleep. And Twyla's like, you just ordered the parfait though. It's just
and then
perfect.
Like Twyla talking about the best friend that ran away as well. Like those little touches of just building the lore of Twyla, of just having this plethora of contacts and friends who are interesting. And I want to know all of them.
Yeah, it really is a really fun episode. So, funnily enough, if you listened to our finale podcast, you'll know one Josh Wigler did predict that David maybe gets like a flat tire or something. Well, he wasn't super far off because David just happens to run out of gas.
Which is the most David thing ever, right? You wouldn't expect David to have ever pumped gas in his entire life. I know that like some places in America, you have people that come out and do it for you.
Yes. So funnily enough, my friend and yours, the one Sarah Ferguson, grew up in New Jersey, and in New Jersey, the state of New Jersey, you have like gas pump attendants. So like you pull up with your car, you hand them like your card or cash or whatever you're paying with, and they pump the gas for you. And like it's illegal to like pump your own gas. It makes me so nervous as like a person who gets a little anxious in those sorts of interactions. I always am like, the first time I had to go to Jersey and get gas, I had to ask, like, what do I say? Like, what am I going to say to them when they come over? And you just say, no, you fill it up, because you don't, you just fill up the whole thing and that's it.
What if you don't want a full tank though? What if you
then
only
you
want
get like $20 and you say you want like $20 of gas or something.
Okay, you don't have to specify like a liquid amount of just I want this amount.
I guess you could say that many gallons if you wanted to. I've never done that.
I honestly couldn't even tell you how many gallons I could.
Yeah, you don't know gallons.
Tolerate my tiny little car.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, so Sarah never pumped her own gas for like a very, very, very long time because she was always in Jersey. And most other states, I don't know how many, but most other states, you pump your own gas. You get out of the car and you pump your gas. And that's it. Petrol, I think, as you would
Sarah
call.
does give that energy of just here's the keys. I'll be back in 30. And it's like, doesn't take that long, ma'am.
Exactly. So, but yeah, that's the reason David doesn't make it super far. But before we get ahead of ourselves, if you're new, if you just happen to be joining us for season 2, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Don't forget to subscribe. You could subscribe to us on YouTube and you could watch our beautiful faces, or you could find us in any podcatcher of your choice by searching Talkin' Shit. That's talking without a G. And of course on social media. So that's kind of the setup. We're talking about Finding David, which is just such a fun episode. It really sets us up well, and I feel like it picks up kind of at a perfect spot after the finale. We're 3 days removed from David leaving, which Stuart feels
Mhm.
like just enough time for them to start being like worried, but not enough
Yeah.
time where it's like, oh, he's dead or he
Yeah.
just is never coming back.
Well, it's gone over the 48 hours, so the presumption is that he is dead, right? According to
Yes.
Roland.
Well, they
But
didn't mention a dead body with the car, so who
I
knows,
don't know.
really?
Yeah, you never know about those Amish. They're up to some wild stuff.
Yeah. Okay, I have a weird question. I ask you a lot of questions about the UK. Are there
Mhm.
Amish people in the UK? Is that a thing?
I had to Google this because I was like, I'm sure I'm
Did
gonna
you?
get this
Did you?
question. Apparently not. Like there are, I
Okay.
saw a couple of things that like there might be some small communities and things, but nothing concrete that I could find, which
Interesting.
would make sense for the Amish because I don't think they would be terribly
They're not on the
online.
internet, yeah.
No.
Yeah, famously not on the internet, the Amish.
Hmm. But yeah, we don't
Uh,
tend to have them. But like
hmm.
they're pocket communities, right? Like, and they don't really
Yeah,
extend out. They
so
tend to be really isolated a little bit, don't they?
right, so up near my parents have a camp, more so in, like, western North New York area, and, there are a bunch of Amish communities, like, I see carts like, carriages with horses, like, on the roads, it's a thing, but yeah, they tend to be, like, in specific communities, because that would be wild to, like, live on your own without a community,
Hmm.
without like electricity, like, you know what I mean? Like you kind of want that community around you.
Yeah,
But yeah,
want to
apparently
churn your
they're
own
in Canada
butter.
as well. Yeah. Yeah. So apparently they're in Canada as well. As we know, this is where this takes place. Also, we did get a Canadian reference this episode. When Twyla is talking about her friend, she mentions Vancouver. I feel like
Ah,
that's the first
yes,
time that it actually has been like mentioned that like maybe they're in Canada.
maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
if that's a really tenuous link. If it is, I think we need something. I think Nanaimo Bars is probably the closest
That's
real
true.
Canadian reference that we've really
Yes.
had.
Yeah.
I hope we get some more coming up at this season. I
We'll
know we've
see.
made some predictions and stuff, but yeah, I'm going to add that. I'm going to slip that one in late. I'm going to say that I want some more Canadian
Canadian
stuff coming up.
references. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's break down this episode with a quick little recap, and then we'll talk about everything that happened. It's been 3 days, and no one knows where David is. Some of the roses seem to care more than others, as Alexis is rearranging her bedroom furniture to avoid the whole Mutt and Ted love triangle. And Moira is having a tantrum over her great grandmother's missing crocodile bag. The Roses aren't the only ones affected by David's disappearance, as he took Roland's truck with him. Fortunately or unfortunately for David, he didn't make it very far before he ran out of gas and hitchhiked his way to an Amish farm where he's been staying the past few days. The Roses head out to pick up David, who apparently texted Alexis his whereabouts. The Amish family is more than happy to be rid of David. And David and Stevie have an awkward reunion where they agree to work through things and get back to their friendship. It's also worth noting that Stevie has a Tamagotchi. I couldn't help but notice as
I'm
a
so glad you
child
made
of the
note of that as
90s.
well.
So the Roses are reunited. Alexis still hasn't made a decision between Ted and Mutt, and seemingly David and Stevie have made amends, and that is what happened on the premiere of season 2, Stuart.
Incredible stuff. I'm so glad you picked up on Tamagotchi. Um, I feel like this is the key thing that we need to hone in on immediately,
Mhm.
because this ties in with Stevie's car. Because
Mhm.
Stevie's car seems to be an absolute fucking mess, right?
Yeah, can I okay, I think we should make predictions. Not predictions, but like guesses. Because I
Mhm.
feel like there are two types of people in this world. There are people who look like they live in their car, like Stevie, and there are people where you could like possibly like eat off the ground of their car. That all the trash that is ever in their car is always removed every time they get out of the car, right? Like it's like spotless. So,
Yes.
which do you think I am of those two subsets of
I think
people in
you're
the world?
a like clean it out kind of person. I don't think that you
Yeah.
could tolerate that. I get the
My car
sense.
is my car is very, very clean. The only thing that isn't clean about my car is like I've always had a dog and dog hair everywhere. But like it's
Mhm.
not messy. And I always take the garbage out, generally speaking. Maybe there's like a receipt or two hanging out in there. But
A
like
receipt or two, you monster.
I know I'm a slob. But that's pretty much everything that stays in my car. Stuart, I feel like I know you play like D&D a lot on the weekend with your friends, and so you're like constantly going over to people's houses.
Mhm.
I feel like you fall kind of in the middle where it's not like a complete like trash can of like gross old food, but I feel like in your trunk you probably, or your boot, sorry, you probably
Thank you.
have you probably have like a chair and a blanket and like all this stuff that you like regularly maybe possibly might need. That's my guess.
Honestly, so accurate at the moment. I was just thinking
Yes.
about what the state of my car is at the moment. It tends to go through cycles. I tend
Mhm.
to be the cab of the group, so I'm the one that ferries everyone everywhere.
Yeah.
So quite often I'll have plastic bottles and things left over from long car trips that people just don't take with them.
That's rude. If
Benj,
you're
if
in
you're
someone else's
listening,
car,
it's
take your
you.
trash. Take your trash out with you.
Yeah. But also in my boot currently are 3 board games,
Yes.
a KitchenAid mixing bowl that I refuse to bring upstairs because I'm like, "No, I need to get rid of it." And I feel that if I bring it into the house, it will stay in the house.
Instead, it just stays in the car.
And a camping, stove and 2
Okay,
bottles
so I
of
was
gas
close
to
with
go
the
with it.
chair. Yeah, I was close with the chair. See, I do have like staples that stay in my car. So like a snow brush. I live in the
Mhm.
Northeast. Things like like the blue juice. I don't know what you call it, like windshield wiper fluid, blue juice.
Ah, yeah.
Like
Fully
that's
out of
always in
that
the
at the
car.
moment, but yeah,
Yeah.
normally.
And like I have like a first aid kit back there, like just in case,
Oh, wow, that's really organized.
I'm a very responsible person.
Yeah, if anyone gets hurt in my car, they're screwed. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
no
you best
band-aids
hope
for
that
you.
it's yeah, you best hope it's bad.
Yeah.
But Stevie, I get the impression that it is. I mean, well, we don't get the impression. We know it's like she's got donuts in there, and she
She
still thinks that they're
sniffed a
okay to eat.
sandwich and looked
Oh,
disgusted. And Moira, I will say, I feel like Moira handled this much better than most people would have. She's like, "Don't be
mhm.
offended, dear, but is this car your home?" She could have
I
said, "This
love that
car is
Stevie just totally
nasty."
wasn't. Like
Yeah.
Stevie was like, yeah, yeah, some
Yeah.
donuts if you want them. Yeah, go for
It's
it.
gross. Yeah.
But I think it lends itself to the Tamagotchi because it's like Stevie's just got these things that are unintended. I don't think that Stevie's touched that Tamagotchi until the keys have
No.
been handed back to her, and she just like plays with that out of
Yes.
awkwardness or
I
anything.
was gonna
But
say
yeah.
there's no chance her Tamagotchis are still alive.
Oh yeah,
They
completely.
die instantly. She'll like get into it for like a day and then she'll forget and then they die.
Yeah. I mean, just
Oh,
like everyone else's Tamagotchi, I don't know anyone whose Tamagotchi lived for like a long period of time. You're looking
yeah.
kind of guilty. Did you have a Tamagotchi that lived for a long time?
I had Tamagotchis. I'm very much a I'm trying to think like I don't want to say obsessive person, but that's probably about accurate. Where I get like really, really, really hyper fixated on one thing for a
Hmm.
little bit, and then my vision shifts to something else, and then I just forget that thing ever existed, pretty much. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much how Tamagotchis worked with me as well. But the funny thing about this is I'm gonna make a quick little teaser here is this isn't the only time Tamagotchis will be mentioned on this show. And there is a
Oh,
very, very funny scene involving Tamagotchis that you will get to watch in the far future.
interesting.
Mhm.
Very rarely you get not one but two Tamagotchi references.
Exactly. So what did you make of Stevie's reaction to David's disappearance? She's calling around, she's trying to see if he's okay, like checking hospitals. Seemingly she's more bothered than people like Moira and Alexis are.
Hmm. I think certainly is coming about from how we left things with them because Stevie quite clearly cares about David. And I think as well, what with David going off because they had that confrontation, I think Stevie probably feels a sense of guilt. Um, I don't think that she should have to, but I think she still does. But nice of her to be responsible though and actually call around, whereas it seems that the family have just as per usual, waited for someone to fix their problems for them.
Mhm.
Oh, but yeah, it kind of broke my heart a little bit, especially when they have the conversation at the end and Stevie still like puts up the jokey barriers and is just like, yeah, I kind of wish you didn't come back or whatever it was similar. Um, you could just see that she just says that Barb to protect herself, and but David, I think, navigated it really well. I thought that it was
Mhm.
just fell on his own sword and was like, yeah, whatever we need to do to get over this, tell me and I'll do it. I was like,
Mhm.
these two.
Yeah. And I did like I feel like we finally got our Stevie back when she finds
Mhm.
out David's been staying on an Amish farm and she's like smirking like she's never heard anything that makes her happier in her life. And that just kills me because I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's no one is really thinking about the fact that like David has been on an Amish farm, you know, that
Yeah.
what is he gonna do there?
Yeah. It's
Sit in
almost
the
as if
middle
he's
of the
suffered
field.
already. Yeah, he has atoned for his sins.
Exactly. Yeah, she's like, okay, he's kind of paid for, what he did.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, let's move on from Stevie and David and let's talk about Alexis before we get into all of the like family nonsense, right?
Oh
Last we
boy.
left Alexis, she had slept with Mutt and was possibly engaged to Ted. And seemingly in this 3-day period that we skipped over, she has not returned Ted's texts or his calls and is just going about her days in town. And I was just like, this is unbelievable. I mean, at the very least, if we want to give her a modicum of credit, Stuart. Like the easiest, weensiest ounce of credit. She refuses to sleep with Mutt again,
How delightful of her, like, to not sleep with someone else while being possibly engaged to another.
despite his very soft hands, Stuart. Very soft hands.
What was up with that? Like, I'm not sure if this is, I think it's curling of mice and men that I, like, don't like. I think moisturized hands being referenced in media, I'm just like, red flag, this guy's the bad guy. But,
Of mice
like
and men, I would have never thought that would have gotten referenced on this podcast. What is it? Is it George and what's his face? Yeah, it's like just look at the
Lenny.
flowers, Lenny. Look at the flowers,
Yeah.
Lenny. Look at the flowers.
Mm. Sad times. No. But the whole Mutt like situation and like she goes over and he has these like expectations that they're gonna, shack up again, that they're like
Hmm.
gonna maybe give this a go. Like maybe he's more interested in the physical side of it, but there's also that emotional expectation there. And she's just been avoiding both of them. I was kind of relieved that she hadn't gone to Mutz, and Mutz was like, yeah, let's get
Hmm.
back and things. And they had been doing anything. I like the fact that she had just been avoiding the situation completely. I think it's the best of any possible scenario, but it's not good. Like, Alexis, this can't be a good tactic here, but
Yeah, she has to do
oh.
something is the thing. I think she doesn't wanna let Ted down, right? She says, "Ted
Mhm.
keeps harassing me for an answer to the whole 'am I gonna marry him' thing," and then there's this whole Mutt issue, which is very complicated and sexy. Like, it's I mean, what I wanna know your guesses on, like, where are we going with this? What is gonna end up happening? And, how many episodes until we end up there?
Oh gosh. In terms of what I think might happen, and I'm trying to speculate both with my kind of like writing hat on, in the sense of like what I
Mhm,
think would be really juicy to like kind of get the most drama out of it, kind of hat, and also just playing into how Alexis might handle this.
mhm.
Is I think she's going to try and go without addressing this for as long as possible, but inevitably Ted is gonna find out shortly. Like, she's told like her parents, she told David, she told the Amish when she was shouting out over the field. I would
Stevie.
imagine Stevie knows as well. Yeah,
Mhm,
like the net is widening and someone is gonna let slip surely at some point.
mhm.
And oh, poor little Ted. It's gonna break his little heart, isn't it?
Yeah,
It
he doesn't
does.
even it's I love Ted, okay? I think he's very sweet. He's also so naive that it's pretty
Mhm.
painful when he says, like, maybe, like, have you not been getting my texts? Maybe I'm not sending them correctly." It's like, "Ted, come on, man." Like, especially when her answer to the question of, "Will you marry me?" was, "Well, if I was staying in town, yes, but I'm leaving." It's like, what what, Ted? Use your brain just for, like, half a second, man.
Yeah, to give Alexis a little bit of credit here, like she's given her answer and it's not a
Mhm.
like 100% enthusiastic yes. Pro tip for anyone, like enthusiastic consent is the best thing you can probably get in this
Yeah.
scenario. I think just a maybe if we weren't leaving, that's a
Yeah.
no, Ted.
Yeah.
Like Cut your
Even
losses,
the
man.
even the physical comedy between them this episode had me rolling. Like the very awkward kiss between them at the diner and all of her excuses about like, "Oh, my life's been so hard. I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping. I'm just so worried about David. Like what if he's at the bottom of a lake?" And then they arrive back at the motel and they're like, "We found David." And she's like, "Okay, but I'm like really tired from walking."
Yes.
It's like, Ted, wake up and smell the coffee, my guy. Like, she's just not that into you.
hmm And this is the thing. Well, it's like, it speaks to his vulnerabilities and his insecurities, or like the fact that he feels like he's finally got like the hottest girl in town. He doesn't want to let her go, and it's like he's looking with such blinkers on that he can't see this.
Mm-hmm.
It's hurt. It hurts. But
Yeah.
the whole thing with Mutt, though, like, oh, because Mutt knows he's getting played. Like,
And
Mutt's been
he says,
told the
"Oh, I'll
situation.
wait. I'll wait." What a
Yeah.
loser. I can't. I just
I
and
mean,
also the other thing, I know I have like such a good hating into Mutt. And once I have a good hating into someone, everything they do just like pisses me off. But he's like sawing a piece of wood, and I know he lives in a
in
barn in his living
wild. What the heck? And he's like, "Oh, you walked into my living room," while he's sawing it, and it's like as if it's normal behavior, and Alexis is like imposing into his living space. It's like, dude, you're sawing in there. There's sawdust everywhere, man.
Yeah, sawdust everywhere, all over your bed. What's wrong with you? Mutt has problems. I just really can't stand him. It's like new season, but nothing has changed. I still
hmm
hate Mutt.
I mean, it's only 3 days later.
It's true. There's not enough time for me to change my opinion on him.
Yeah.
But let's talk about how Moira is handling things. She is very distracted. I mean, if you want to be generous to Moira, maybe you read it as she's really, really upset about David. And so she's like using the bag as a way to like express that emotion. But I think we all know better than that.
Yeah.
What do you think of this heirloom crocodile bag that has been passed down through the women in her family as a means to be able to escape swiftly in the night and sell the bag if they need to leave their husband?
I think such a good idea because I mean, for one thing, it's quite an ugly bag, I thought as well.
It is,
But
yeah.
so why else would you want to retain it unless it had a excessive street value? But Moira's just freak out over this. Like opening the show with Moira screaming, I don't think is ever going to not make me laugh. I thought it was
Mm-hmm.
hilarious. But then when Stevie arrives and they talk about things, and then she goes, "Oh, Mrs. Rose, you got out of bed." I was like, "Oh, maybe she does really care. Maybe she has been that distraught over it." I was like, no, I think it's not to do with that at all. I think it's the fact that she didn't get out of Schitt's Creek. I don't think it's got anything to do with David.
Yeah.
So that and the bag tied together, I was like, yeah,
Mhm.
this is Moira being peak. It's all about Moira in this episode. So funny though, and the way that which she was talking about the bag and like the wigs, talking about it as if it was a living, breathing
Yes.
thing
It's
that was
alone
out there.
and
And
scared.
scared. Just
Yeah,
so
it's
dumb.
ridiculous. Every chance she gets, she mentions the bag, right? Like,
Mhm.
oh, has anybody seen David or his bags when they go to
Yeah.
pick him up? David, let us help you and your bags. She can't, like, it's an obsession with this bag. And I know we get on his case a lot, Stuart, but seemingly Johnny is the only Rose who is actually concerned about David's well being of all of them.
Yeah, and I was gonna like sort of just say like I wonder if it's also that kind of separation of responsibilities that Johnny and Moira have when it comes to the parenting of whether or
Yeah.
not Johnny is the more big picture. David's run away. This looks bad. Like whether it be reputational or image or something like that. So it's like we have to address this. Whereas Moira is a bit more calm because he's done this before. Remember when he chartered the jet without permission? Like this is different scenario, but it's all indicative of the same behavior. So she knows that he'll eventually come back or something will kind of happen that will resolve it. So I think maybe to give Moira not entirely a bad kind of like basting here is that I think that she maybe is projecting that. But Johnny having the freak out and kind of doing what he does, which is controlling the situation and doing it badly because seemingly he didn't call around to anyone. He
Yeah,
just,
that's the thing. He's freaking out, but not actually taking any action.
mhm.
And
It's so
it's
weird.
yeah, and it I also love the idea that like both Alexis and David have gone missing in the past, and
Mhm.
they all have the same like reason of like, why is everyone freaking out? Like nobody freaked out when Alexis went missing, and Alexis's reply is, "I didn't go missing, David. The FBI knew where I was the entire time." Like, what
I
has
love
happened
these
to this
stories
family?
so much. I love Alexa's stories, and we got like a fair few of these kind of like references. Like she
Mm.
talks about kind of being taken by the Smiley Pirates for a week. Um, this like lore that they're building with Alexis just having the most wild life beforehand, where she is just being the subject of whatever Liam Neeson taken film is on that year, seems
Yes.
to be just the same thing over again. But then I also love the fact that they did a callback to like Moira being a kind of a bit of an unattentive parent with Alexis, because when she talks about being taken by the Smiley Pirates, she's like, I just had my eyelashes dyed, everything was cloudy.
Yeah. And it's Johnny who's the one who gets them back on the page. He's like, "Can we all just take a second and realize that David has been stuck with the Amish for 3 days?" And they both are just silent, and you just see Alexis's face, which I can only describe as like a big yikes. Like,
Hmm.
she just has this like yikes look on her face of like, "Oh, yeah, that's the case." And so they go to pick up David, and I'm a sucker for in pretty much any sort of show, sitcom or otherwise. I love when you get the band back together when like every character is in one scene. So like any scene where all of the roses are in it, I'm going to
Hmm.
automatically like it more. And so just this image of David wearing all black in the middle of a field with like as Stevie puts it, a dead squirrel on his hood, just sitting there and it's like, David, it's us. And he's like, I know. Like, just so pissed off at me. You're like, okay, we're back. We're back. And to have the first thing Alexis say is like, "Hey, David, you remember Mutt? Yeah, from like 3 days ago. Yes, Alexis, he doesn't remember. She's like, we
Yeah.
slept together, just screaming it across the
Ooh.
field. Yeah, and he goes, "Oh, yeah." It's just, it is one of my like favorite moments in the show, just because it's so funny to me that like Johnny is the one who's trying to keep them on track. Moira only cares about her bag. Alexis is like, good, another person I can get, a consultation with on my
Mhm.
love triangle. And David is just like, it took you 3 days to find me. I texted Alexis.
Oh, that reveal that he texted Alexis, and she was like, I can't be expected to reply to every single text. And like, come on, Alexis. I know you've got a lot going on, but this is how can you not put two and two together? She's so self-absorbed. I love her
Yeah.
for it, but yeah, you've got to say it. She's so self-absorbed.
It's remarkable how self-absorbed she is, and what I love even more is the fact that the Amish family is so ready to get rid of David. They're like,
Oh
"We
yeah.
learned patience and understanding. We thought we'd be stuck with him."
Mhm. We spent 2 sleepless nights wondering what would happen if nobody came. Would we be
Yeah.
stuck with him?
It's just it's so perfect, and then to have them kind of, like, stopping for ice cream and having this conversation where, the big reveal of Moira's bag, and she lied to Alexis about the bag so that Alexis wouldn't get any ideas, and earlier in the episode, we get Moira and Johnny saying, like, "Don't worry, dear, I'll never need it, but Alexis will need it to get out of a bad marriage."
As has been demonstrated this entire episode as well.
Yes. It's just
Oh
so perfect.
dear.
Like I love every single aspect of this episode. Like there isn't a bad moment in it
No.
between even when they're going over to the shits, like and Roland is talking to the guy on the phone about where the truck is, but he forgets to even ask about David. It's just like every single second it feels like you said earlier, like they're firing on all cylinders. They're back with season 2 and they're not letting a moment of this 22 minutes go to waste.
Yeah. It was also great to see Roland returning back to Roland being a bit of a like an abrasive character. Like when he's
Yes.
drawing that conversation out on the phone for as long as possible, I was there just going, you're the worst. You're like, there's
Yeah. Oh,
legit
I'm good. How
like,
are you?
oh dear. But then at the end as well, like David apologizes, admittedly not in the best way. David like needs to work on. I mean, David stole a truck. Like David should
Yeah,
be like
he did.
really apologetic. But if you're not getting the apology that you need out of David, address it, Ronan. Don't just stand there and stare at him until you're okay with just stealing his juice. Like, what the hell?
I love how much Alexis is enjoying David's misery because this feels like a sibling relationship, you know, like she is just loving it. She goes, "Ooh, burn, David." She
Yeah.
loves it so much. And then he steals her. He's like, "Well, I'm taking this." Like just
Yeah. And it just ends with her going, David!
yeah, it's so childish, but it's just so perfect. Like I love this episode. And it's just like they're every single moment is so funny. Like it's like the
Mhm.
laughs per minute is off the charts on this episode. It
Yes.
just never slows down. From even the visual gags of like Moira with her, I don't know, headache wrap thingy. It's a kind of see-through. Like it looks
The blue thing?
ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And like, you know, Alexis kind of like scooting the beds together, trying to make a king size bed. The whole thing from start to finish is just iconic. I love this episode so
Yeah.
much.
I'm just
Um,
so glad it's come back and has I say it's come back as if they just released it. Like they have in my mind. But I love that it has and I love that it's lived up to the expectations because I worried a little bit that what
mhm.
we did with the last season with everyone saying like it gets better and I was like, okay, saying it a lot, so I believe them. But
Yeah.
is it going to overhype in my head? Like, am I going to have too higher expectations? But I think it lived up to everything really well, and it's like,
Yeah.
and I think it's because of what you said. It's that it hits that kind of like constant amount of laughs. There's no like uproarious, like full on howling laughter, like, but it's just good, solid like chuckles throughout the whole thing.
Mhm.
And I think it's a really good thing to have, like, to not build to this massive crescendo of like the comedy, just to have it, enjoy it, and then check out at the end of the 30 minutes. I think it's just really great writing.
Yeah. And on top of that, I like that we didn't waste any time. You know what I mean? It wasn't
Mhm.
like multiple episodes of David's gone. David's now living in New York and now we have to get David
Yeah,
back. Like it's very much like, no, we're 20 minutes. He didn't even get very far. He got stuck on an Amish farm and now he's back and everything is fine again. So
yeah,
I also really like the way they address the Stevie David stuff. Like it seems like they both are kind of like, okay, like we're gonna be friends again, right? That's where we landed. Okay, good. And it's not a question of like, oh, now Stevie has all these like unrequited feelings for David and now we must address those. And I just think maybe I don't know, in my opinion, this is my head canon that they were like the Stevie and David stuff didn't work, let's just scrap it immediately in the end of episode 1, we're going to call it a day and be done with it. Of course that's my head canon, but I'm like, because I really didn't enjoy it.
yeah. I think for me, it's that the two of them gave it a go in more kind of in different circumstances. Maybe it could have worked. Maybe in a different life it might have. But the two of them both have their barriers, and they only allow each other to heal from what has happened previously because they lower those barriers for each other and enough to welcome them in as friends. And I think for me, that's a great way to settle it because it's like it's done with. There is a kind of light line drawn under it, and that they've taken a conscious decision to go forth and be friends rather than this.
Mhm.
And I think, like we said before, it's that now that that is not this lingering kind of shadow over this relationship, that will they, won't they? No, they won't. They're going to be friends now, and
Yeah.
I like that. I like having that settled at least.
Yeah, definitely. Let's get into some feedback. We got a message from Aaron saying, and we're off. David crouching in the grass in that hoodie with a pitchfork is just so iconic. It's one of my all time favorite scenes. Can't wait to hear you guys chat about this one. And I agree. This is an episode, Stuart, that I think I may have mentioned this in maybe the finale podcast. This episode is usually on people's like top 15, top 20 lists in terms of like the best of
Wow.
Schitt's Creek. Probably, and in large part, I think due to that scene of David on the farm, everyone screaming at each other from across a field. It's just so great. Everyone's on different pages in terms of like what they're
Hmm.
caring about in that scene. It's just like chef's kiss. It couldn't get better than that scene.
Yeah. No, I loved it completely, and the fact that like they have no shame. Like they're screaming across this field about Alexa's talking about the whole mutt situation, Moira being more caring about like the bag than anything else. All while this
Yeah.
poor Amish girl is doing the farming beside David, and he's just listening into everything. Like they have no shame.
No, they really don't. They really don't. Well, let's get into our ratings here. Simply the best and disgruntled pelican for MVP and LVP. Stuart, who are you giving your simply the best point to this episode?
So I always struggle with this because I wonder whether or not I should base it off of who made me laugh the most, who I think had a good story beat, or who generally has been a good egg in this whole
Mm-hmm.
like situation. But this week, I think I've got to base it off of who made me laugh the most. So I have to give it to Moira because she was just a laugh a minute, was hilarious throughout this entire episode. And I kind of just like the calm wisdom of knowing that David will probably be fine and being more consumed with the bag. It's just such a stupid premise for a joke that
Mm-hmm.
somehow they managed to absolutely wring everything out of and it not feel tired. So funny. So yeah, she gets my MVP for the week.
Yeah, I haven't been this conflicted in a while on an episode of who to give a point to. I'm very much with you in terms of being conflicted about what the reason is behind the point. Is it
Hmm.
because I laughed so much, or is it because I think they're being nice, they're being a kind person? Because a lot of this show is like the roses need growth, right? They need to grow as people. So do we reward them for that? And I think I want to try to like not right some wrongs, but like give a little bit of credit where we weren't able to in season 1, and say that like Johnny was the one who was focused on the right thing this episode. Even though he
Yeah.
didn't do much in the way of like actually helping, he does go to Roland and Roland gets the call and then they go and get David. So I am going to give a point to Johnny because he had a really rough start to the show in season 1, and I feel like I have to give him credit for actually being the one person to be like, "Can we all focus for like a hot second? David's missing."
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
And you know in that scene after Alexis is shouting out being tired from walking, that when it cut away from that and then we got to them in the car, in between those scenes, he absolutely shouted at Alexis and was like, "No, you're
yeah.
getting in the car. Come on, girl, we're gonna get your brother." Like
Yeah.
and again, like possibly Johnny's finest moments are the organization behind the scenes that you don't rarely see. So yeah, I think it's a justifiable MVP for sure.
Yeah. What about disgruntled pelican? Who ticked you off this episode, Stuart?
Between two, as per
Mm-hmm.
usual. Alexis and Roland. And again, it's what do I bring it down to? Because Alexis, again, like her mother, had me howling with laughter at times. Some of the lines that she delivered in this episode were gold. But then Roland, I think, was the worst person in this episode. I'm going to give it to Alexis.
Okay.
I like the fact that the whole uh, complicated love triangle is still
Mm-hmm.
ongoing.
It's gotten
Yeah.
complicated. Just get the
Don't
shouting across
care.
the field.
Don't care. It's a sexy problem, but I don't care.
It's just sexy problem. Your hands are like so soft. Um, it's funny because I was kind of waffling between them as well. Of course I considered Mutt. He didn't do enough to
Mhm.
warrant me hating him like so much. But I'm gonna go with Roland this episode, mostly because I think it's absolutely horrifying to be like, oh, your child has been missing for over 48 hours. They're probably just dead, right? We should just call off the search, I guess.
Yeah.
That is a horrendous thing to say to a person. So yeah, and the fact that he gets so on David's case, like just say something and then leave. Like I appreciate pettiness and everything. Like the stealing the juice was pretty funny, but like it's just you're just awkwardly standing there at that point, Roland. Like either say something or leave. Come on, man. So yeah,
Yeah.
Roland's gonna get my disgruntled pelican point. Ay, ay, ay. All right, I do have some visuals for the class today. So don't forget, we are on YouTube if you want to see what we're going to be talking about. Unfortunately, we didn't have any Moira wigs. However, we do have two visuals that we're going to need to talk about, both in
Yeah.
regards to looks. So first comes first, we got to talk about the missing person flyer for David because
Yes.
it's horrible. Like, I love the small details on this show. So if people didn't like pause down and actually read the flyer, we can kind of talk about it here. It says missing David Rose and in parentheses and luggage. Just so messed up. It's so messed up.
Do you think,
White.
I've got to
Yes, go
ask,
ahead.
who do you think actually put this together?
Um,
Do you think it's a Johnny?
I think it was Johnny, and then Moira proofread it and was like, "You better add luggage on there."
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it was a Johnny as well, and I think as he sat there like at the table, like drawing it up, I think she's just shouting in the like background, just and
Not
luggage, like
my bag.
over and over again. Yeah,
Yeah. White male, 31 years old. He's 5'9" ish. And he's between 150 and 180 pounds, in parentheses, closer to 180.
so rude.
And then the picture of him, as David says, is like it's like a headshot from some sort of like talent agency. And he said it is pre-nose job. And this is very obviously, it actually is a picture of Dan Levy.
Yeah,
But
I think
yeah,
I read somewhere that it was actually a yearbook photo
that
that
makes
they
sense to me.
had
Yeah.
used. It was something that Dan Levy had posted on Twitter or something. But I love the attention to detail that they even added in a little credit underneath saying Lion's Eye talent
Yes.
as well. Like clearly from the headshot days of when they were
When he was a
child
child
actors for a
actor.
period. Yeah.
And then it's his last scene wearing ill-fitting harem pants and black sweater. And then it says, if found, please contact Johnny and Moira Rose, Schitt's Creek, and then it says reward. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is, and he says, this is pre-nose job. How would anybody recognize me? It's like, come on now. We all can see that that's you. Look at those
Yeah.
eyebrows. Those eyebrows don't lie. You know? Come on now.
Exactly. I think if you were to see this kid in the wild, you'd be like, are you Eugene Levy's kid?
Yeah,
Just for the
easily.
eyebrows alone.
Yeah. So that's the missing person flyer, which really cracked me up this episode. And like I said, unfortunately, we didn't get any new Moira Rose wigs, but we did get quite a Moira outfit. Um,
Boy, did we.
this ensemble was worn to go pick up David. And funnily enough, Stuart, I think her dress kind of matches his like sweater hood because it does kind of look feathery, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's almost I thought when she kind of wore this, it was quite gothy, like what with the kind of
Hmm.
black feathers and things. And part of me wondered whether or not she was going for a funeral for finding out that the bag had been destroyed or sold or something like that. That had kind of that. But when she turned up and matched David's kind of like feathery outfit, I was like, of course these two are like from the same family. They are just
Hmm.
linked in that just eccentric way. The tights how?
Yeah, I can't tell if they're like very wide fishnets or if it's like black with white polka dots, but there's
Icon.
something.
She's an icon. And the hat. We've got to
Yeah, the
appreciate the hat as well.
very large brimmed hat with like some feathers on top. It's certainly an ensemble. Of course, she has sunglasses to go with it. And like she's always wearing heels, so you see her trying to like walk through the dirt and it's like you knew you were going to a farm, Moira. Come on now.
Mhm.
It's just
It's
it
every
feels
occasion.
she lives her life like Alexis with who was the actor when they picked up did community service, they wore a gown or something. It's like it doesn't matter the occasion,
Oh,
always dressed
Naomi
to
Campbell,
impress.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
So
love it.
it's
I also
ridiculous.
noticed that she always wears these fingerless gloves as well, like
Yeah,
the leather gloves. She wears those quite a lot, doesn't
her
she?
hands must be so sweaty. I just can't
Yeah.
imagine.
Oh,
I really can't. It's a lot. So that is her outfit. It's quite ridiculous and yet very very iconic. So no wigs, but maybe next week. Maybe next week we'll get a new wig. But
maybe.
before we leave everyone today, of course we have to tier rank the episodes. So for those who've forgotten, we do have a tier ranking system where at the top is hot shit, then full bouquet, love that journey for me, you David, and shit out of luck. And as you can see, if you're watching us, it is a blank tier list currently. which is
This is
great.
the one time that we will just purely be putting something into a category and not ranking it against another one. So
Yes,
we
because
cannot
we're on
be
a new
called out.
season. It's a new season, new tier list, baby. So we just have the one Finding David that we're going to be ranking here today. Stuart, any gut instincts on where this belongs?
Gut instincts high, certainly. This was a really great episode, but I have to bring it down to the practicalities. Are we setting a new baseline here? Is this the new
Hmm.
standard that we have to bring things to? Like, do we put it in the middle to hedge our bets a little bit? Or do we acknowledge greatness? I'm thinking a bit of
Yeah.
both. I'm thinking perhaps a
So
full bouquet.
my question would be, if you're, because I think hot shit is very much like best of the best, right? Like,
Yes.
you're saying this episode either has no flaws or has minor flaws that you really don't care about. So I guess my
Mhm.
question would be, is there anything that you don't like about this episode that would keep you from putting it in hot shit?
Ooh. Not enough Jocelyn. There was only a marginal amount of Jocelyn.
Yeah, she's a
Again,
very small part.
I might be the same with like other small characters as well. No Bob, no Ronnie.
Mhm.
But in terms of the actual what we were presented with, I don't think I changed that much.
That's what I
Like,
was thinking as well. Like, of course, we could say we want more Jocelyn, more other characters, although that would take away from like the content that we got. It's not like we would say,
mhm,
oh, I would replace this entire scene with something else.
yeah,
I'm leaning towards hot shit, which I know is like spicy for the first episode of the season. It's setting the bar very high, but I also think like I love this episode so much. I don't know that like there are going to be a ton of episodes that are going to fall into hot shit, you know? Like I think hot shit is really reserved for the best of the best, and I can't think of a minute of this episode that I didn't enjoy. There's just like
mhm,
every single scene has something that makes me laugh. I guess if you're going to want to like maybe really nitpick, it's like, well, there's not a really like an emotional moment, but I also find that that's a little bit more rare, and I don't think we should be looking for that every episode anyway, you know?
yeah. I mean, fundamentally, this is a comedy show,
Right.
and I think the drama complements the comedy, but the comedy should be the kind of like meat and bones on it.
Yeah.
I think you're right in that because yeah, I think hot shit. Certainly, I wouldn't take anything away from this episode. I think it's kind of
Mhm.
good, but I think we also did get enough of the emotional stuff as well to complement it. Like we got a good scene with David and Stevie where both
Yes.
of them brought down the barriers a bit. David apologized. Stevie then reduced the bar and was like, "Okay, well, we can move on from this, can't we?" And they agreed,
Mhm.
and that was a really nice scene that wasn't overblown. It wasn't kind of like too convoluted. It was done and they moved on and it was really good. But the comedy shone in this episode. So yeah, I'd certainly be happy with it going in
Yeah.
hot shit.
All right. I think what we do is we put it in hot shit. Now, if we decide later in the season that we're like, no, we really like overestimated it, we'll move it down to full bouquet. I think we're within our right to do that. I don't think anything's locked in until the end of the season. I don't think we really moved anything after the fact last season, but I think we're allowed to do it if we want to because it's our
And
podcast and we
so
can do whatever we want.
exactly. You can't tell us what to do.
Yeah, you're not my real mom. So it's gonna be in hot shit for now. And we'll see if it stays there. I just think it's such a solid episode. Like it really has pretty much everything I love about the show, which like
Mhm.
we get a family moment with all four of them with the eating the ice cream. Even the tiny things of the way they eat the ice cream, like the way David looks kind of disgusted as he's eating it just works for me, you know? Like it's kind of
Yeah.
wild, but it just works.
Mhm.
It's such a good
It's
one.
they're fully realized characters now, and it really should now.
Mhm.
We've had like 13 episodes to really get to know them. They've had 13 episodes of writing them, so now it should be smooth sailing from here on out.
Mhm.
There's a bad episode, I'm gonna be pissed.
Well, speaking of next week, we're going to be covering an episode called Family Dinner. Stuart, do you have any
Sure,
guesses?
it's got to be a healing dinner of sorts. Like, let's come together as a family. Let's talk about everything. Let's talk about the Mutt and Ted situation as a family. Let's talk about David's situation, perhaps with Stevie. I think this is going to be possibly a Johnny instigated family dinner. I think that
Okay.
this is Johnny's like trying to heal.
All right, I will say next episode I know contains an explanation for something I've talked about in the past, Stuart. So like, like one of the inside jokes, like an ew David or I love that journey for me will be explained after next week's episode.
Oh, thank God. Because there's
So
so many. Like
there really
sometimes it's a
are.
different language.
Yeah, you'll have a little bit of clarity next episode, and won't be alone. We will have a guest, which is really exciting. So, I
Yes.
can't wait. I really love next episode, so I'm really excited. I mean, I'm gonna say this like every week probably at this point,
Yeah.
but I really do love next episode. So I'm excited. You can find us next week here talking about Schitt's Creek season 2, episode 2. And yeah, in the meantime, I'm over on Shit 90 Shows Taught Me talking about Buffy, talking about Felicity. We got a lot going on over there. Like Buffy is firing on all cylinders right now,
Hmm.
and I just have to say I'm the number one Woz fan. Willow and Oz, I'm shipping them really hard. Bangel haters can get, or Bangel lovers can get out of here. I don't care. We're all about the Woz in this household.
Yeah. No
So
one wants
yeah.
Angel. No.
No, who cares? Truly, who
Yeah.
cares? It's just like, oh, I'm broody and I say one line at a time and then I leave. Like, okay, I'm enough, Angel. That's enough out of you.
I'm beginning to sense a pattern here.
Yeah.
Angel, Mutt.
Angel and Mud. Yeah, that's true. They're like two sides of the same coin.
Like that episode with the shirt popping open. Oh my God, they're the same character.
They're the same character. It's like that Pam meme of like, look at these two pictures and they're the same.
Same picture.
Same picture. Oh my gosh. So
Gosh.
yeah, you could find me over on Shit 90 Shows Taught Me and on Twitter at the Just Sterling. Stuart, anything else you want to plug or talk about?
And then the plug, find me on the socials, Stuart Drinks Tea. Would love to hear everyone's feedback as well. So if you could send those in, we really do appreciate it. And it's great to see that so many people are kind of watching along for the first time as well in some cases. So yeah.
All right. Well, until next week, we will say warmest regards.
Best wishes.